Hey, welcome to the Articulate Ox Podcast, episode 4. I am your host, Soma79. Thank you so much for joining us today. So my guest is magician Eric Burke. When I started this podcast, I'd said that I would be talking to people from various industries, various different creative types, artists of all kind, and Eric definitely fits into this mold. He's somebody who has absolutely blown me away from the moment that I've met him with his ability to perform some pretty mind-bending tricks, as well as his ability to communicate with people, to sort of sell his story, sell himself. He really has it all when it comes down to being a magician. He's part salesman, he's part showman, he's part everything. So it's really great to talk to him today, and I'm really excited to share this conversation with you all. The topic that he chose was magician Terry Ward, who, if you've ever been to Disney in Orlando and seen a street magician down there performing, there's a really good chance that it was Terry Ward. Eric was fortunate enough to have a relationship with him at a young age and was able to learn from him while he was still developing his skills and still getting inspired. And it really, if you look at where Eric's at today and just how great he is at what he does, you can really see how the influence and the experience of knowing Terry definitely paid off. So I look forward to sharing this conversation with you that I had with my friend Eric. And if you're looking for a magician in the New England area, I would definitely say reach out to him. His work is pretty unbelievable. So follow me at Soma79 on Instagram or at Soma79 on YouTube. And I hope you stick around for some more episodes. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. This is Soma79 with the Articulate Podcast. We are here today with my guest, Eric Burke, master magician. Eric, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Fantastic, man. So so glad you could join us here today. I appreciate you're down here in your magician's lair, and hopefully we can talk Eric into showing us a few tricks later on. So I've known Eric for maybe about a decade. I met him through a mutual friend, and just he blew me away from the beginning. So I think I probably annoyed him peppering with questions. So I brought him on here to pepper him with some more questions. So thank you very much, Eric, for showing up. So Eric, why don't you tell me a little bit about, so you wanted to talk about, this podcast is about talking to creative people about what their inspiration was. In particular, we try to drill down to a specific inspiration and work from there. So you chose magician Terry Ward from Disney. Why don't you talk a little bit about Terry and what he means to you and how he came to be on your radar?
Yeah, definitely. So Terry Ward is the magician, or has been the magician for the last 30 years at MGM Studios and Disney. He just retired after a long time, 30 years. Him and my aunt, they knew each other growing up. They knew each other in college. She graduated Emerson College Theater. They both moved out to Florida to work for Disney. He was the magician, and she was a stage person. Right on the side in MGM, she would sing. She kind of worked her way up. But when I was 6 years old, she brought us down to Florida, and she brought us to the show. And it was an awesome show. He called me up on stage about halfway through, and he kept me up on stage pretty much the rest of the time to help him with his magic. He did some magic to me. At the end, everybody clapped for us. Kind of drew me in from there.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. That's amazing. And one thing too, I did a little research on Terry. He wasn't just a magician at Disney; he was essentially the magician at Disney, correct?
He was the magician, yes, sir.
Which does put him in pretty rarefied air, because the only other Disney magician I can name was Steve Martin, wasn't he? He was a Disney magician for a while. I think he got
or
maybe that was his first job in showbiz. I think, and that was obviously years and years ago. But it's not bad company to be in.
No, not at all. I mean, Terry Ward definitely takes a few other magicians there under his wing and stuff like that. But other than that, he is the magician, the main magician there. He was a great magician.
It's funny too, in the Steve Martin is too. So so it speaks to something I've noticed when I see you perform and when I watch tapes of Terry. And Terry performs under the name Jack Diamond sometimes. That's correct, right?
Yep. So it's sort of it's a character more like maybe 50s character fitting in with the MGM theme of the park to some degree. But it works really well with the magic because he's got that very like wheeling and dealing and the hat and all that cool like almost like gangster fedora stuff. But like the other thing you notice is that, and I've seen this in your act and in his, to be a magician, you also have to be other things. You have to be like a comedian. You also have to be able to lead a room. You have to like sometimes be a babysitter. You have to do all these things that you're sort of doing without, it's almost part of the sleight of hand because you're almost, your charm is almost like the, they say the city is like the fifth girl in Sex and the City. Like charm is like the trick in the back of your book to some degree, I'd say.
Pretty much. I mean, you have to pretty much look at the crowd, see what they're doing, and then fit your role into the crowd.
So what makes a good crowd versus like a bad crowd? I mean, is there something, or is it pretty much, do you consider it on you to bring? Because you see some comedians who like, they're like, well, sometimes you just eat shit and people don't like it, but it feels like that's not as much an option in what you do. Or maybe you have more tricks in your bag too.
Realistically, it's the entertainer's job to wrangle the crowd. Yeah. So there's one big thing in magic called crowd control. Okay. And I'm sure it's not just magic. I'm sure it's all entertainment, including, comedy. But crowd control is huge. If you see someone over there in the corner who looks like he's going to be a heckler,
don't indulge.
However, if you see this person over here who looks like they're enjoying themselves, they're just going with the flow, they're going to be a good person to call. They're going to be a good person to bring up. But regardless of that, every show I do in the beginning, I do something called a warm-up. Okay. So some areas of entertainment might be different, but my warm-up is to try to warm them up to clapping, to having fun. And the way that I do that is I usually say, hey, how's everybody doing? And then they say good. And then I tell them that they didn't do good. So it's a little bringing down to bring them up tactic that I do. And then the next time I ask them how they're doing, they go crazy. Yeah. So what that does for me is throughout the show, it gives them the okay, I guess, inside to clap and to have fun. And
I haven't done that before. I haven't done that. I mean, if you don't do that, people might love your magic or love your art of what you're doing, but they're going to stand there like this. And that's it. Even if they love it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So you have to like sell yourself before you sell what you do to some degree, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because if they don't like you, they're not going to like what you do.
I mean, it's not even just you. I mean, they have to know that they can actually do that. They have to know that they can clap. So that's what warming up the crowd means. It doesn't mean, warming them up. It means to let them know it's okay to have fun.
Yeah. That's funny because I'm thinking about different times that I've seen warm-up acts in different realms of the world, like hip hop and stuff, and how often they don't think about it from that perspective and what a valuable lesson that is. That it's like you mentioned, we were talking before about like pro wrestling, stuff like that, that it's like not everybody's the main event. And part of it is understanding how you act at what part of the performance, like whether you're opening for somebody else or even opening for yourself, warming the crowd up, that is an integral part of just understanding that it's not just, you don't just go to 90 at once. The crowd's not ready.
In my opinion, it's the most important part. It's the most important part of any show is to get the crowd ready, get them warmed up. So,
yeah, opening. You have to open strong and close strong.
Closed very strong.
Yeah, yeah. I remember. So I hired you to do a party a few years ago. And you did something. I don't want to give away too many of your secrets here, but this is something that I thought I saw you doing, but I wasn't really sure. So maybe it's all in my head. But so we had a dinner party and I invited a bunch of people over and didn't tell them what the surprise was. I said there'd be like a guest, and I sent like burnt playing cards with invitations and stuff. It was a surprise anybody even showed up. But like, so when you came on, knowing that people didn't really know what you were doing there, who you were, you just threw a fireball on the table. And I was like, oh, wow, damn. Like, that was just like, all right. And it was like such an instant, like, okay, Like that'll wake you up. But then I saw what you seemed to do is you started with like what would seem like a very basic trick. And I could watch the other people in the room, and I'd seen what you do before. So that's why I kind of knew that you were like, you didn't learn this out of the Cracker Jack box. And I could see people that were like, they're like, okay, well, I could probably learn that. And then like, as soon as that look on their face came, it was like you knew to ratchet it up. And you still almost suck them in more because in my opinion, what I was seeing happening is people going, okay, that's interesting. They're kind of looking at the mechanics and going, I can pull this apart. And then, so they were invested and interested. And then you just took it up like 4 levels. And then they were already in, but the part of them that could figure it out was almost gone. And I saw it happen on all their faces. I was blown away.
So, I mean, any show that I ever do, or even any movie that you ever watch, let's just say, I mean, you can't just go in, boom, strong. I mean, get their attention is one thing, the fireball, boom, attention. Here you are, you're looking at me. But for a magician, at least, going into a magic show, if you do like your best trick right away, okay, and then you do your worst tricks, it's going to make the show seem like he's not a good magician. Oh my God. However, if you start off small with like a card trick that someone else could do, and then you work your way up to like levitating something.
Yeah.
I mean, people are going to go from here to here to here to here. And I call that climbing up a hill. Okay. You want them to climb up a hill during a movie. You want them to climb up a hill during a performance of any kind. Once they get to the top, that's where they're going to either jump off and go, woo, or it's going to kind of fizzle down and go, I don't know. All right. So if the good performer at the top, they're going to do their finale. Okay, and that finale is going to literally push them off the edge so that they're going to encore, clap. It's going to be crazy. So that's what I try to do. Every show I do, I try to work my way up.
Now, it's funny you say that because the room you're in now, I assume it's the same room you gave me that tour of a couple years ago, pre-COVID. So
yep.
All right. So I came by one day and you showed me around and you're kind of showing me tricks. And it's like, you weren't putting on a performance, but you're like, oh, let me show you this works. But each one was getting more and more impressive. And the last one you showed me has been breaking. And I know I could probably do some Googling and figure out how this worked, but I don't want to do that. Like let me see if I can recount this. We're standing in that room you're in now, and there's a briefcase leaning against the wall. And almost as an afterthought, you're like, oh, let me show you this. And he's picked up this briefcase, put it down on top of a table where I could see underneath it. It was like a regular table. It wasn't like a block or anything. Then he just opened it up and pulled out a bowling ball. This briefcase was about maybe this thick, and the bowling ball obviously was like the size of my head. And that's kept me up at night. Like, I don't know, like, I came up with a new theory last week, but as I was trying to like play it through my head, I was like, "There's no way to hit." Because I did a little research for this, and I found out how sometimes they do the trick with an animal, where they make an animal appear, and I was like, could it be similar to that? And I'm like, if you had time to do that, then I'm really impressed. It's like every where my brain keeps going. Like it wants to make it simpler, but every explanation I come up with makes it more complicated, which is, I love that, So my question is, can you ever really trust the magician? Because I don't know whether you were setting me up for that from the moment I walked into your basement or not, because that was the finale of what you showed me and it's still in my head.
So your question, can you trust a magician? I would say out of all the magicians I've ever met, yes, you can trust a magician. We're probably the most loyal people you'll ever meet, actually. I'm in several clubs on Facebook. I'm sure you could Google them and check them out. Will they let you in? Probably not. Right. However, thousands of magicians in there, okay? They're all so kind. They would legit give you the shirt off their backs. I've had a bunch of them over in my house. So yes, I would say you can trust a magician. Could you play poker with a magician? Maybe not. But our loyalty definitely lies in our friends and family.
So that's a good question, actually. I hadn't thought about that. If you were to go to like Vegas or anything, or a casino, would you feel that you had some sort of advantage, unfair or otherwise, or is that just part of the...
So no, definitely not, because we're not controlling the cards, right? We have to control the cards in order to do the magic tricks because they are magic.
And control is a big part of magic. Is you are in control, and you're controlling not only what people are seeing, but the room in general.
Of course. So I'm gonna break it to you. Magic is not real.
Hot news. Shit.
And a lot of people think it is. So if you YouTube, magicians on YouTube, you'll eventually run into those people who think magic is real.
Really?
People, yeah. I mean, do a Google search after this. Go on YouTube actually and search like magicians or demons. Okay. And you'll pull up a bunch of videos where the person who is running this YouTube channel thinks we're demons.
That must be so validating.
I mean, I don't know if it's validating or insulting.
Oh yeah, I mean, maybe I'm looking glass half full. Now, like someone goes, "No way, this could be fake," because it's so amazing. I'd take that.
Well, I mean, I watch these videos and the tricks that they're saying that these guys are demons. I do, right? So I know how they work. So like in the whole time, I'm not going to say how they work because magicians don't do that. But this whole time in my head, I'm like, this poor person thinks this person is a demon. Like, and I'm sure that happens a lot, and it happens to me. I mean, I've gone to shows many times where I run into a person who really doesn't like magic. Here's an example. I did magic for a Jamaican Me Crazy night, okay? And there was legit people from Jamaica, playing bongos, and they legit started packing up and they refused to play because I was there. They thought I was a witch doctor. Okay.
Wow.
So the owner came to me and she said that I'm going to have to leave because they need their music. And I was forced to go up to these people and show them how my trick was done. Okay. The one that they, which was in my mind, it was okay because I kind of felt bad. These guys were legit packing their stuff up really fast. And then they kind of like chilled out a little bit. And then I showed them one more trick and then they started to play music again. It was kind of okay. But I mean, there's also been times where I've done a show on a Sunday, a restaurant where I walk around and the people don't want me to do magic because it's Sunday. So, I mean, there's a lot of that.
That's, I never even considered that. That's wild. It's, hard. That's so funny. It's just, you imagine what goes along with that sense of belief as well. Like that it's not like they must believe other absurd things, I would think. I don't want to insult anyone, but that's
I mean, it's funny. It's going to come right out of Peter Parker's uncle's mouth, but with great power is great responsibility. So I felt as though, in that situation, I would tell them how I did my trick. Okay. Right. So, but I mean, that all leads back to being a good entertainer. So you can't claim you're really magic in this world. Right. And people that do, I mean, they're not part of the magic circle. They're just doing their own thing. So everything we do is tricks, right?
Right. Especially now too, where, I mean, I'm assuming now in the digital world, I'm learning more and more about digital animation and just things you can do with green screens. Like that must add a whole other layer of, it's almost like there was a time in battle rap where everybody was supposed to be coming up with everything off the top of their head, but only like a quarter of the people were doing that. Everybody else was making up ahead of time. And then it was very an uneven playing field. So they changed it so that everybody just writes it ahead of time. But with magic, it feels like there must be something similar where there's some people just trying to use, camera trickery. Where does that fit into, as more people are consuming content online? How is camera trickery something that's accepted in the magic circles, or are you still really, is it still really more about sleight of hand to be a real true magician?
All right. So that's a very, very tough subject. So here's the thing, right?
Talk around it if you want.
So movie magic is a magic too, So camera magic, trick photography, stuff like that. That's still magic, okay? Right. But here's the fine line: is when Chris Angel or any of these guys that have TV, episodes out there, when they're doing magic, and then someone else comes up and says, "Hey, can you do that?" No, I can't. And the reason why is because, I mean, they're on TV. So a lot of these guys, the first season, it's legit things that we can all do, all magicians. But then once, the TV kind of takes over, now it's turning into TV magic. So, I mean, is Chris Angel levitating building the building? Yes. Is everybody in on it? And yes. So, I mean, that's all I can really say about it. But
well, it's funny. I'll go one step. This is something I heard someone else talk about. I was on a podcast about magic last week, and I think it was comedian John Gabris was talking about how he saw The Amazing Jonathan maybe 20 years ago, and Jonathan was doing a trick where he was supposed to teleport from the stage up into the crowd. And basically what he did was just tell the crowd to pretend that and it was being taped for something. He was like, all right, so everybody react like I went up there. I'm just going to run up there. And he was like, and Gabris talking about it was like, I didn't know what to. It was like it felt like, well, now the entire audience is cast members, and you didn't or just involved in on it, and you're like, you came there to see a performance, Well,
it's not something I would ever do personally, but yeah, I mean, those magicians that want to get on TV, they do what they got to do, I guess, So making the whole crowd in on it without them knowing, in my opinion, I don't think it's right. I'm sure it looked great on TV though.
Right. Is it got to make a living, so I don't want to crap on the guy too bad. I think if everybody's seen the Amazing Jonathan documentary, he's had a lot of ups and downs in his life. So,
sure.
Yeah, it's great to watch. It's a great watch. Wow. So let's talk a little more about Terry, because that's what we sort of came in to talk about. So you had your first interactions with him around the age of 6. That must have had a major influence on you. I mean, as you say that, I'm standing behind me. There's some of my action figures that I got when I was 6 are still back there. My He-Mans and my Flash action figures in DC. So they obviously, that stuff had a big impact on me as well. How much did this really change you when you had that experience, and how did it filter the rest of your adolescence where other people may have been dropping off from the things that they were passionate about? How did you keep going?
So at 6 years old, right, you would think you wouldn't remember too much from being 6 years old, but being up on stage with a magician and everybody clapping for you, 1,000 people, I remember it to this day. I remember it to this day. 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way to now. I've always stuck with magic. I've always done it here and there for parties, for my friends, for my family. It's been a huge part of my life, and I'll continue to do it forever. So, I mean, I don't know if I answered your question at all, but it's been a huge part of my life. Terry Ward. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go for it. You're going to mention Terry?
I was just going to say Terry Ward was a huge, huge inspiration. I mean, just seeing that you can actually be a magician, for a career, right there and then, I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
He did that for 30 years. I mean, that's a really long time to do magic.
Yeah.
So
you get pretty good at it that period of time. But speaking of, for you, you said you started around 6. How old were you when you were able to kind of really first amaze people? Because I'm assuming the first couple of years people were being polite while you tried to pull rings together. But how long did it take you to get to a point where you could really blow people away?
I did my first show at 12. So that's 6 years right there of practicing. So I was 12 years old. It was a free show. I didn't charge any money. It was a birthday party in my community. I lived in an apartment building. It was a complex. And I probably did awful. So being the first show, that you've ever done, I mean, I'm sure I did awful. But the parent appreciated it. She came over and she tipped me $100. So $100 being, a 12-year-old.
12, yeah. I'll give you some encouragement. I mean, that right there is more money than I made off art and music up until I maybe hit my mid-20s. So that's a pretty good start, man. If you had bought Apple stock with that right now, you wouldn't be half to be being a magician.
Trust me, I know. I regret every moment.
So from there, so was Terry someone that you could even reach out to back then? I mean, obviously we couldn't just text back then and stuff too,
right.
But
so I talked to him on the phone a few times. But again, there was no Facebook. There was not even texting, at that point. no computers. So I would talk to him every once in a while. So no, my aunt was the biggest actually at that point. She would relay messages to him and come back to me with an answer. And
That must have felt so cool. Like,
very cool. I mean, my aunt is cool in general, man. She has worked her way up from being a singer that would open a balcony on MGM and sing, all the way up to where she is now, where she's managing a whole bunch of producers who produce the shows for Disney.
so she's like an Imagineer, or she like, or at least that realm of like people who are working for Disney, creating creative stuff for the wow.
She worked her way from, being that singer on MGM to being a director, producer, producing, the Little Mermaid show,
which is amazing. I've seen that a few times. It's so good.
And there's magic in there too. And Terry Ward helped on that as well. So, but yeah, and then she worked her way up, and she's still there. She plans to retire next year, but she's an amazing person. I remember when I was 16, I had a huge crush on Britney Spears. Okay,
as did we all.
Don't tell anybody.
I still do, so that's fine.
But Britney Spears was part of the Mickey Mouse Club. Okay, so
yes.
At one point, she was performing in Disney, and my aunt got her on the phone with me. I swear.
Really?
So I was very, very in awe. I was
this is before Hit Me Baby One More Time, then, right? This was like Mrs. Mickey Mouse Club days.
No, this is right when she started doing the
wow.
It was pretty big at that point. She was there to do some sort of Disney sing-along thing. And yeah, she got her on the phone, and my sister was there too. And she put her on the phone, my sister as well. My sister, she wasn't as gullible as me. So she was asking her questions. And it turns out it was really Britney Spears. To this day, I have to say, Auntie, so was that really Britney Spears? And my aunt is not a liar. She would, she would tell me, and she says, yes, it was. So, but yeah, so she's been around a lot of really cool people too. So.
I wish I could tell the story. I can only tell part of it because of my friends, but I had a friend who got a phone call from Chris Farley the week before he passed away, a guy that went to college, and we was trying to get him on like a radio station. And he seemed kind of haunted by the never knowing of whether it was really him, but as like the way he described it matched up with his biography that I read about him. I'm like, that really sounds like it was him. It's like, this is the weird thing where it's like these days it's like, unless you're that football player who didn't know he had an imaginary girlfriend, it's pretty easy to know if you're really talking to who you think you're talking to. But back then there was a lot of trust involved.
Right.
Wow. That's amazing. It's funny because this is the third episode of this that I've recorded. And the last episode I talked to somebody and I asked them about a similar question, and they're like, oh yeah, I met The Rock once. And I'm like, everybody I know is living these very interesting lives. I'm like, maybe I should leave the house.
I had quite a lot of people doing magic. As you know, I was in a movie, The Gray Lady.
Yes.
I met Eric Dane, which was pretty cool, and Rebecca Gayheart and Natalie Zay. They were very nice people.
So how did that happen?
So a friend of mine, his name is Chuck. He's been in the movie industry forever. He's always working on the sidelines. He's doing like driving, being a production assistant. And he reached out to me and he said, hey, do you want to come and work in a movie? And I said, sure. So I got on a ferry, went to Nantucket. I got there. And I didn't even know what I was in for. And he gave me a microphone once I got there and hooked me up and said, all right, you're a production assistant. And I said, all right, whatever that is. So we started going, and he was giving me advice on what to do. And there was 3 Erics on set that day. So they decided to call me Magic because I magic. So magic this, magic that, whatever they ask you, you go and do it. And all of a sudden, next thing you know it, Eric Dane's over saying, who do they keep calling Magic? And I said, that's me. And he had me do a magic trick for him and said, you're the best magician I've ever seen. And then said, you should be in this movie. And next thing I know, I'm in the movie doing a scene where I'm just a magician at a function. And I started to get to know everybody on the movie. John Shea was the director and the writer. Very cool dude. If you've ever seen Lois and Clark, The Adventures of Superman back in the day.
I used to love that show.
Hatcher, he was Lex Luthor.
Oh, wow.
No, I know.
That's
And I'm
wild.
a super nerd too. I love, superheroes. So
Yeah.
I was more excited to see him than I was Eric Dane. It was really funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was a really nice guy as well. And then he ended up having me be a stand-in to get makeup done on my back as well. So I think you see my back about 30 times. You see me for about 4 seconds, my face doing magic. But it was a really cool experience, and I met a lot of really cool people out there. And but yeah, Chuck is my buddy, and he calls me every now and again and says, "Hey, you want to do this? You want to do that?" And yeah, so that's how that happened. But
So it's amazing. You have this really specialized skill that very few people have, and it's funny how the story just told me. You can walk into a room and you can kind of turn it around your way if you kind of wanted to, or like if given the opportunity. Because I mean, has magic ever gotten you out of trouble? In any degree, ever found yourself in a situation where you had to rely on magic to get you out of it, or?
so I don't get into trouble. So not me per se, but I mean, I've gotten other people out of trouble for sure. I mean, there's always times where I'm in line somewhere and there was a little kid being, I wouldn't want to say bratty, but bratty.
Yeah.
And, I'll take my ring off and I'll do a ring trick and he'll just look at me like, and then he won't say anything. He'll just stand in line. He'll look at me and his mom will look at me and say, "Thank you." And I'll just say, "Mom," and that's it. I mean, and that happens a lot for sure. But
My dad has a friend who looks like Santa, and whenever he would go to restaurants and see a kid acting up, he'd go over and be like, "I got my eye on you." And the kid would always like,
I think that's what I do.
no, but I mean, that's awesome.
But there's been other times where my wife and I have been out, to restaurants, and I've done a magic trick here and there for people, and they bought our dinner.
Wow.
Like that happened many times. So is that trouble? No, but that's definitely benefit for sure.
Right. You're giving someone an experience, and they're always going to remember it.
Yeah. And, especially when I'm not hired to be there, I'm just there and I see something happening, like they're having a wedding anniversary or whatever, and I think a lot of magicians do that. It's a good way to get exposure. It's a good way to make someone's day.
Yes.
And that's overall, if you ask any magician, why do you do this? Okay. And I'm sure I hope you didn't have that question down. Why do you do this? But I think they're going to answer you two ways. They're going to say, for one, they love it. And for two, it makes people happy.
Yeah. And that's a huge part of, I think, why when I think about my art and art in general, I mean, to make people happy is amazing. That moment when you give someone, for me, a picture of their dog and they like cry, or like when you perform that trick and you change someone's day, it's hard to even put a dollar figure on that. You feel, it's like, for me, sometimes all the hard work that went into getting there is about those special moments, because you can't get those any other way.
It's funny too, because when I started, I used to do kids shows, all kids shows. I didn't do anything but kids shows. And then as I worked my way up in the business, the industry, I started doing all adult shows, which is kind of where I'm at now. I do pretty much all adult shows. I'll throw a kids show here and there if I'm friends with people. Or
yeah, I sent you to one a few years ago, and I believe you said it was like a very well-paid babysitting gig.
Well, that's yes, but it's okay. I mean, you have to stay humble. You have to know where you came from. It's going to make that kid's life change. Every single kid remembers the magician.
Yeah.
Here's a very good example. I have $50 that I carry with me in my wallet, and I bring them everywhere. Okay. And I'll do tricks for people, and I'll let them keep that $50. Okay. So about a year ago, I was in a store, and a kid came up to me. He was this huge kid, huge muscles, tattoos everywhere. He was probably 19, 20 years old. And he comes up to me, he says, "Are you a magician?" And I said, yes, I am. And he goes, "You did my birthday party." And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, all right, I don't remember this kid. I don't remember doing his party. And I do adult birthdays all the time. So I'm like, I don't remember this kid. And he's like, yeah. And he reaches into his wallet and he pulls out a coin. And he goes, "You gave me this coin on my birthday." And then he goes, 12 years ago.
Wow.
So that means this kid remembered it for 12 years, to the point where he carried around this coin in his wallet. For 12 years, he's had that coin. So
let me blow your mind for a second. Hold on one second. This plastic container right here. This is one of the cards from one of the tricks you did at my party. I have another one that's burnt somewhere, but I literally just turned to my right and saw this in this container that I have. So
you got to think to yourself. I mean, our job changes people, and they remember forever.
Oh yeah.
So you give them something, they're gonna keep it. So.
I mean, I would say you did that to me too, because I've always had a little bit of interest in magic. I've always just been like, I've always thought of like art as being magic in some way, because you're creating an illusion. You're taking this stick of lead and this piece of tree, and you're creating the illusion that creates an emotion. And so I've always like bought into that idea. So when I met you, I was just like, oh man, like, it's a whole other level of discipline that it takes to get to what it is that you're doing. Like how long would it take? I mean, I guess maybe the wrong way to ask it, but how long did it take to really impress people? I think I sort of got on that before, but like, what is it like the discipline aspect of it? How much discipline does it really take to become good at close-up magic?
So that's a really tough question, because every magician is really hard on themselves. Okay. So especially even if you were to go to a joke stop, and you buy yourself a really easy magic trick to do, and you bring it home, and you're looking and you do it good a couple times, and then you go to show someone, right? So in the back of your mind, you're always going to think, regardless, I think they know how it's done, or they're going to catch me doing this. So even myself, I've been doing magic 32 years. I still sometimes don't think I'm good. It took me, 30 something years to even think I was good. I'm always hard on myself. And I think every entertainer is the same way. They're very hard on themselves. And I think you just have to practice something a little bit and then go out there and do it. And if people react to it in a good way, I mean, you're doing good.
Yeah.
So
but you had showed me a couple basic tricks a few years ago, and one of them was a card trick, and I got that one down pretty well. And another one, I forget exactly what it was, but it was had a little more sleight of hand. And I was like, I don't know there's no way I can do this. But I tried it on like two people, and they totally, I won't say fell for it, but it was like, it went well, even though I didn't feel that it went well. And it occurred to me that part of this is that people want to be taken for a ride to some degree. Like, the average person, they don't want to see you. They've already like the back of their head has already invested into wanting you to succeed to some degree, I think.
Well, another aspect of it is they don't even know what you're going to do in the first place.
That's yes.
Same thing with even a musician or a painter or anything. Okay. So let's say a musician comes out on stage. An example is Post Malone, who fell, a few months ago and broke his ribs.
Yep.
Or any of them, that come out and they fall, or a magician who comes out and they flop their trick. People don't know what they're about to do anyways. That could be part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that's part of the magic. I mean, being a magician, you're doing this trick, you're thinking it's going to go so good step by step by step. Now, if you miss a few steps and the trick still goes good, nobody knows that you missed a few steps but you. So that's why you think it might not have gone well, or it's not going to go well. But the audience sees it differently. They just see it, woof, there's a trick, and it went perfect,
Yeah. Do you find yourself still amazed by other magicians in a similar way to the way that you amaze people? Or does that go away the further down the rabbit hole you go?
So I feel like I know how everybody does everything they do. I feel like I figure it out, when I watch. But I think just like an actor, once you're an actor, you look at movies so different. Once you're on a set, every movie is just like you're thinking in the background. That's a cool set, Oh, that actor did good that time. So when I watch a magic show, I love it. I still love it. I'm like a little kid still. I watch it like this, but I know how it's done. However, the beauty of what they're doing, like watching someone do something that I do, and then their movement is so much flawless, or what they're doing with their hands, or if they're levitating something in the acting, because magic isn't really magic. It's an actor becoming a magician. They're acting as they're a magician. So when you see another magician and their acting is so good, you appreciate that. And I think that's why the Penn and Teller show is so cool, because do they get fooled? I don't think so. But when they see a good magician who's being a good actor and acting out their role so good, I mean, you got good.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. I'm at that level where, I go to a magic show and I love it still. And I see what they're doing, and it's almost like beautiful, it's art up on stage,
Some degree, it sounds like you're watching the magician more than you're watching the magic. Like the regular crowd might be appreciating the magic, but you're appreciating the magician and what they're doing to bring it there, and that's pretty. Yeah.
So you get me.
Yeah, I do. Of course. Yeah. Wow. So I guess how many magicians are really out there, like that kind of operate at like your level, or?
You wouldn't believe the number. You probably wouldn't even believe it. There's a lot.
I've only met one, and it's you. So yeah.
I know. And you know what? It's funny. A lot of people go their whole life without even meeting a magician in person. They might see them on TV, but that's one of the questions I actually ask. When I'm out in public and I do some magic for someone, I ask them, I say, hey, have you ever seen another magician? And I used to ask that at shows. I would start my show by warming up the crowd and then asking them, hey, have you guys, who here has ever seen a magician? Raise your hand. And not a lot of people have raised their hand. So you're right. However, there's probably 3,000 just in Massachusetts.
Wow, there's that many?
There's a lot. There's a lot of magicians everywhere. Do they perform like I do, or like, no. There's a lot of hobby magicians out there. There's a lot of ones that are kind of minimal, that only do a few things here and there. That's why you never hear of them. But a magician doesn't mean you're doing shows. I mean, a magician is meaning you've practiced the art. A magician means if you throw someone a deck of cards or a coin, they can do some stuff. So there's amateur magicians. But as far as on my level, I would say in this area, at least 100.
So is it part of that? So as you're learning the tricks, or I'm sure that's a fair word to use, right? Tricks or illusions, or are you at the same time developing the other skills, like the I don't want to give too much away in the little bit that I do know, but like the just being able to engage people? Or is it that, do you think that you kind of have to already have that? Do you work on that separately, or does that all kind of come together? How does that work?
So it's hard because I'm writing a book as well. So on how to become a great magician.
Exclusive news: Eric Burke writing a book. This is new to the Articulate podcast. We had it here first, and I can't wait to read it already.
So the book, you'll read it, I'm sure, but it's mostly going to be for the upcoming magician, okay? Because without these kids that are learning magic now, there would be no magicians in the future, right? Because then, I would die off and other people would die off, and then what would happen, So I'm actually writing the book, and it's going to be on how to become a great magician, okay? You can be a semi-great, but if you want to be the best, there's steps you have to take. I mean, I'm constantly learning. I learn every day. You want to be a good magician, you want to take good speech classes, you want to talk good. You want to make sure that your acting is up to point. So an acting class. So, I mean, if you're a magician and you haven't taken an acting class, you could be doing better.
That's great advice, especially too, if you think of it like, you would think that if you're doing something that has to be an illusion, you're spending a lot of time by yourself, I would think, in order to really work on this. And that's the exact opposite of what gets you good at talking in front of people or feeling comfortable in front of other people. So the acting class is probably great. Just the discipline of having to go and do and answer something must get you a lot.
I mean, it's definitely beneficial. I mean, the more things you can do to learn about the art, and when I mean the art, it's not just magic, but the acting, the talking, then the better you're going to be. So I have a lot more learning to do. And I'm 38, so I hope to be doing magic till I'm a wizard,
that's the right attitude too, is that like, I think when you get to the point that we're at in our lives, it's like, I think to try to always be in that teacher student mode where you're always willing to teach, but also always willing to learn seems to be the like kind of, at least for me, the best way to go. It's like knowing you don't know everything, but knowing you still have other stuff to pass on, I think puts people in a good position to succeed if you can do that confidently. So it's for other artists.
I agree. And I mean, you're never better than someone,
Right.
That's a huge thing to always learn and stay humble. That's another one too.
Yeah. It's funny. I had forgotten about this until now, but I saw David Copperfield when I was a kid. I saw him at the Wang Center in Boston. But what I remember the most is midway through the show, he announced that Marvelous Marvin Hagler was in the crowd. And then like he got up and waved and left like 5 minutes later. It was like, it was very odd.
That was very odd.
Yeah, it was an oddie, but I was one of those people who in the late 80s definitely was, there were all those Copperfield specials. He was like levitating across the Grand Canyon. And I remember particularly him doing the walking through the Great Wall of China bit. I think he did some version of that on stage that night, but yeah, I just, so he's probably one of the first people that, obviously Houdini, but of like living magicians, him and Chris Angel. Do you think they do your crafts? Do they do it well? I mean, I think about like in hip hop, the people that are at the very top of the game aren't always the people who like the real hardcore hip hop people really say, is that who I'd want at the top? I mean, do you think they do magic well? I mean, in terms of the industry and the impression or?
So David Copperfield, yes. We'll leave it at that.
Okay, sounds good to me. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I just was so blown away by that stuff as a kid. It's just, and he had that presence. He has that presence too, where it just sort of sucks you in almost immediately, and you're like, okay, well, I'm on board for this. He has that.
I'll tell you one thing. He definitely took an acting class for sure. David Copperfield is definitely a master of his craft. And I watched him as a kid too. I will never forget when the Statue of Liberty disappeared.
Yes.
Okay. That was intense. I was on the floor in Indian style like this, like watching it, like, and that's huge too. I mean, in my life, I mean, watching these magicians, but Lance Burton is another one.
Yes. Yes. Forgot about him.
A lot of people forget about him, but Lance Burton and Terry Ward were my two inspirations on where I am now. I mean, Lance Burton is second of Terry Ward. I don't know him personally, but I would watch his specials all the time. And I remember as a kid, I was probably about 8 years old, and his special was going to be on TV. And I begged my mom. We just got a VHS player, and I begged her to go to the store to buy me a blank tape so that I could record the special. And it was pretty expensive at the time, to buy.
Yeah.
I think it was 99 cents. And at that time, that's a lot of money. So
yeah.
My mom said that, yeah, all right, I'll go get you one. It'll be your allowance. And I taped his special that was on TV. And I probably watched that 1,000 times. It was a dove act where he made doves appear, and he had the music, dun, 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 and it was probably the most amazing act I've ever seen. I recommend going to watch it. And what I did was I merged my style is a little bit of Lance Burton and a little bit of Terry Ward kind of merged together into Eric Burke.
So is at that point, you say you're 38. I'm 43, so you're like 5 years younger than me. I'm trying to think of in time where you were when you started learning. You must have been around 1990 or so that you would have been learning, like around, like you were born what? I'm not good at math.
Yeah, 90. Okay. 1990 when I went to Florida. Yep.
Okay. So like at that point in time, without having a resource like someone like Terry, what was it like how much harder was it to even get your foot in the door of learning these basic, like the basic concepts and stuff? How is that different to someone now?
So I'll never forget when I got back from Florida, because my mom didn't go. It was the time where they could literally send two little kids on a plane by themselves with a stewardess to Florida. And I remember when I got back, I looked at my mom. I said, "Mom, I'm going to be a magician." and what mom wants to hear that. They want to hear
Right.
dog toy or whatever. And
I went to
but she-
film school, so I know about those types of disappointments.
She was really cool with it though. She said, okay, we'll go get you a magic kit. And, she bought me a magic kit. And then every Christmas or birthdays, my aunt from Florida would send me a magic book. And my mom's really cool. I had a learning disorder as well. I couldn't really read that great. And some of my speech was kind of off.
Me too. I had to take speech classes when I was younger.
Yeah, me too. So she would read me some of the books, and she would like kind of show me on what they would say. And luckily these books had pictures, because then I would, take my hand and kind of map it up with the picture and kind of do what I had to do. But she would read them to me up until I would say about 8 years old, and then I took over, and but yeah, she would read me the books. And so the difference between now and then is, books compared to YouTube, I guess. YouTube is probably huge. You can learn almost any magic trick, generic magic trick rather, on YouTube.
But that's a great lesson, though. We said about having, your mother reading the books. Is that I was watching something the other day about the Return to Oz, this movie that scared the crap out of me as a kid. And it was talking about all the Oz books, and I was having these vivid memories of my mother reading me this really long, like one of the other Wizard of Oz books, and I just remembered how much that had an impact on me going forward. And there's something about, we were talking about validation earlier, that like when you're young, an adult is willing to validate something you're interested in by going down that path with you. That's huge. Like it's huge to like I can't imagine if I'm sure this happens more now than when we were kids, but like if my parents were like, okay, you like hip hop music, you like cartoons, like let's have this be something we do together. And, that's a huge thing. Just for something, it's a gift you give a child. Like, I know a lot of kids probably hate taking piano lessons, but that's a huge gift. And if it's something that, and like with magic, if the parent actually gets involved and helps validate this as being something that's at least interesting and worthy of time, that's so huge.
It is huge. And to this day, my mom will say, I taught you everything you know. So she's a good lady.
That's awesome. It's so many times you hear people have my parents didn't pay any attention and that's why I did this, but it's so awesome. And it's like, I think some people get in their head that it's like, oh, I'm not tortured enough to be an artist or creative, but it's like, nah, you just, a little validation, a little help along the way. It's, puts you on the right path. It's just, I always have this thing, and some people frown at me when I say this, but I'm just like, there's so much focus on sports when you're a kid, but like, it's like 1 in a million actually make a career out of it, but you spend your entire childhood doing it. And it's like, there's others, and it's stuff that they're like, well, you learn team building and stuff like that. I hated sports and I'm still a good team player, so I don't know. But like, I think there's things that you give yourself as a kid that really sets them up to be more than, I don't know, like a passive observer later in life. So.
Sure.
Yeah. So let's see what else we can talk about. So you look like you're ready to maybe show some tricks or something. Is there anything you'd be able to kind of show us today, or?
Oh yeah, of course. I'm always here to show you something, buddy.
I'm putting my glasses on for this because I'm Right. So what do we got here?
Oh, this is just a goblet. Yeah, goblet. Inside the goblet, we got a cup. Okay, so do me a favor. Tell me, where is the ball?
It's on top of the cup.
You would say that, but it's actually on top of the bottom of the cup. You see, top of the bottom, because the cup is like this. So if the cup is like this, it's the top. But this is the bottom, correct?
Yep. So it's on the bottom of the cup. Yep. All
right, perfect. So here, watch. We're going to do something with the ball, okay? Now watch. If we take the ball, we sprinkle it over the top of the cup, we'll get it to disappear. Did you see? Look, check it out. It'll actually end up inside the cup, just like this. Now, I know what you're saying. You say, let's do that again, yes? Here, watch. We got the ball. We have it on top of the cup. You see it right on top of the cup, just like this. We're going to take it just like this. If I squeeze, blow, where'd the ball go?
I have my theories, but I'm still pretty freaking impressed.
If you think it's inside of the cup, you're wrong, because it's not inside of the cup until you snap your fingers. You see? Watch, snap your fingers inside of the cup, just like this.
Oh, there goes my theory. Holy crap.
It's okay. Don't worry. We'll do it one more time. We'll take it this time. We'll put it inside my pocket, just like this here. Where's the ball?
In your pocket.
Nope, it's under the cup. You got to actually pay attention. We'll do it one more time. We're going to take it. We're going to put it in my pocket. Where's the ball?
Under the cup?
No, it's in my pocket. Under the cup is a big ball.
Oh, fuck you. This shit gets me. I don't know.
Here we just have a marker, okay? We also have a mirror. All right? The back is felted. This is my practice mirror. This is what I do to practice, okay? I look in the mirror and I do my tricks. However, I thought of a really cool trick with this right here, okay? Now, this is just a little wooden brick.
Yep.
And it has a little slit in it. Do you see it right here?
Yep.
We're going to put it right here, you see? Just like that, and that's it. Now we're going to try to do something. You ready? Watch. We're going to take this marker, and we're going to try to get it to go through the mirror. You see? Just like that. Right through the mirror. Look. We'll get it to go right through.
What the fuck?
We can do that one more time. Here, we'll just put it just like this here. We'll put this on here. I call that my little teleporting hole. Teleporting hole. We'll get it to go through just like this. Now, I know what you're saying. You want to see the side. Look. We'll get it to go through, but you can see right after. Look.
Wow. I feel so stupid, which is it's I like how magic and like reduces you to a childlike feeling as the person watching it, where it's like it does something to your brain where you're so used to seeing things, being able to comprehend them, that when you don't right away, your brain doesn't really know what to do.
So you can't feel stupid. So I tell everybody the same thing. I say, listen, don't feel stupid. This is to entertain you. You got to let your mind release, okay? You have to bring yourself back to almost where you're a kid. You know, entertainment is key. However, this is the last trick I'll do for you here, okay? It's an old trick. This right here was actually built in the 50s. We're going to open this up, and I'm going to show you exactly what's inside, okay? Inside is a candle. Okay, in a holder. Here we are.
Yep.
And this candle is a solid candle. Okay, back in the day, they used to make these out of wood so that they would burn for a really long time. Okay, in the ancient China days, they used to burn a candle in the middle of town so that they know exactly when it was ready to do things. These symbols right here actually say, it says work, play, sleep. Okay. Work, play, sleep. So when this burns here, it's work, work, work. Here is play, play, play. And here is sleep, 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 right? That's how it worked in the community a long time ago. The community didn't really like the way that it works, so one day they actually decided that they wanted to change the rules. So a gentleman actually decided to go in and do some magic. And he said, watch, we're going to try to get the rules to change. Now, without the candle, without the candle, there is no work to be had, no?
No.
Now, the commoners didn't really like that. The people that were in charge of the city went to it and took the swords out, the magical swords. They brought the candle back, okay? Now, the candle is back for now. The next night, they go to light it. Now, the swordsman, the guy who was the magician at the time, said, you know what? I'm going to put a spell on it so that they can't reverse it, all right? So what he did was he did the same thing he did last time. This time, he did it just a little differently, though. He put it in like this, and then he put it in like this instead. Now, this time, he actually got the candle to stay, you see?
What?
And the only thing that he took out of it was, look, the play.
Great. I have something else to think about all day. I appreciate it. That's you've ruined my day. That's amazing. Wow.
Don't worry. In the scheme of magic, everything goes back to normal, but
Holy crap. It is pretty crazy how, like, so this is something that I kind of wondered about when I started seeing you do stuff on TikTok. And I never actually stopped to do this, but I'm like, but like, part of me is like, well, I'm seeing this on film. You know, it's one thing when it was David Copperfield in the 80s and you had video. It's like trying to slow down VHS is not, you're only going to get so much. But like,
sure.
You would think that trying to like look closely at what you just did, I feel like I could watch that all day long and still not know, And I kept having theories as you went, and then it was like instantly, as soon as a theory popped in my head, you did something to disprove it.
I think that's how magic is supposed to be. I mean, it's layers, it's not just one thing. It's a layer upon a layer upon a layer. And that's why it's so good. And I mean, if you think about it, magic back in the day, let's say the late 1800s, right? When Harry Houdini was around, he is known as the greatest magician of all time. And I agree. I love Houdini. But he was in a day and age where magic was a lot easier. Okay? Magic was easier. Because you think about it this way, movie theaters didn't even exist.
Right. People were jumping out of the way of a train coming to the movie theater. It was like people were more ignorant, I guess. They're easier marks, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and there wasn't even movie theaters yet. So, I mean, the only thing people could do was go to a theater to see a show, So, I mean, this day and age is a lot harder. It's a lot harder to get people's attention, for one. And a lot harder to prove people, prove that your trick is cool, for two, and to not have them figure out how it's done, I guess. I mean, the internet, I wouldn't say killed magic, because it indeed did the opposite. It actually helped magic. Because now there's a lot of people out there that wouldn't have been into magic that is into magic, and that's good for magic too, because we don't want it to die. We want it to keep going. Right. It's just going to look a lot different in the future.
It's funny. I have a really good friend of mine. He was an amazing skier when we were younger. He's my age, so he's kind of slowing down a little bit. But like in the mid 2000s, he was really getting into trick skiing, and I was really getting into like hip hop and freestyling. And we found that like when we looked back on it a few years later, that really it was YouTube that once that came out, and I could see so many more battle rappers, and you could see so many more tricks. The rate you could get better so much faster, but meant everybody else could too. And it was like Tony Hawk did I forget what move it was, 10-20. He did some move nobody thought anybody could do, but once he did it, so many other people knowing that it could be done were then able to replicate it. So you got to think that must speed up development, or evolution at least. Must speed up some of the evolution of this.
Now these guys are going.
Yeah. It's like physics haven't changed. It's like, but like right. The idea that knowing somebody else can do something gives you a confidence that maybe you can do it, and then maybe do something better or push that person something better. So that's the double-edged sword they always see about YouTube and the internet now, is that like it in some ways it lowers the barrier for entry, but it raises the barrier for supremacy, I guess, for being like that the true top level, And also, too, for some, like people just have less attention spans they do now. I imagine that when you were younger, there were less things distracting you from practicing a trick numerous times now. It's like today, to stick through something like that, you really have to love it, and you're being assaulted with so much other stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you even see it on like things like TikTok and stuff. So, I mean, in my opinion, a magic trick should take at least a few minutes, to get the beginning, the middle, the end.
Yep.
But these kids want it's like 15 seconds you got, So that's why the tricks these days are literally geared towards TikTok or Instagram.
Yeah.
So a lot of these I don't even buy the tricks anymore. I'll make a lot of my own stuff now, because this stuff's not relevant to me. You know, I don't want to do a trick for 15 seconds. I want to go and do a show, you know, for an hour.
Right.
But yeah, that's the difference now. There's a lot more like quick tricks out there that kind of just get people's attention right away. And it's very cool. Don't get me wrong. I love it. I still love to watch it.
Right. I'm sure it's like there's something to learn from all of that stuff.
Yeah, you learn every day.
Yeah.
That's what I said.
So like to that point, you know, so this podcast is really about inspiration. If you were starting out now, what would you tell somebody that, you know, if someone was starting out now, want to be a magician, what advice would you give them? What are some good tricks to start with? And what are some good resources to get a good foundation?
So my biggest advice would be to practice, never give up. Cause that's the biggest thing. I mean, when people are in entertainment, there's a lot of people who give up too easy or too fast. And you never know. That next hour could have been your hour, you know? And that's the biggest advice I can give to anybody. My wife always says to me, she says, you know, you've done a lot with this, and sometimes people will come up with some promises or saying they want to do something and it doesn't happen. And she asked me, she says, how do you keep so positive? And I say, because you have to, because that next thing that happens is going to be the thing, you know? And if you gave up, then it could have happened and then it didn't happen, you know?
Right.
So biggest advice is stick with it, stick through everything that you're doing, and eventually it's going to happen. I mean, it's going to happen eventually.
Yeah, that is great advice.
As far as tricks to learn, I mean, cards, pick up a deck of cards, learn how to shuffle good, and then go from there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Wow. I feel like there's so many questions I'd love to ask you, but I know I'm not going to be able to get the answer I want, especially on camera. So I'm trying not to like, you know, so you said you're working on a book. Is that similar to the thing that I had helped you with some art a little while back? Is that similar to that or?
No. So the book I'm working on right now, is more for magicians who are or have been in magic for a long time or coming in new, that just wants to know how to take it step by step in order to get to where they want to be, I guess. Because when I was fresh into magic, there's not a lot of agents out there or managers that are willing to take on magicians, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of them want singers or whatever, or maybe you're just not in an area that has managers. Maybe you're in like, you know, New Hampshire or an area that's, you know, it doesn't work out like that. And there's steps that I wish I knew when I was first getting into this. I wish I knew because it would have made things a lot easier. And that's pretty much what my book is going to be about. It's going to be about making it easier for the upcoming magician to do what they want to do. And that's magic.
Awesome. So how far along are you?
Just started because I had a graphic novel I needed to finish. So I just finished the graphic novel, actually.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Couldn't have done it without someone special.
Oh, wow. Hey, I drew that.
You did.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can get the light a little better so that your audience can see your wonderful artwork.
Oh, that's cool. Wow. It's funny. I remember when I told you that I based that idea off of, and I was sorting through, I'm trying to reassemble my CD collection. They're in the cases are one place, the things are the other, the booklets are the other, and the CDs are in the third. And I saw the cover that I sort of thought off of that yesterday, and I was looking at it and thinking about how cool. I love that cover. And man,
yep.
I cannot wait to read that graphic novel when it's done.
Yeah. I have a little more work to do to it. I mean, I finished up the writing portion of it, but there's some ideas that are still bouncing through my head. So if I had to put a time on it, I'd say at least another couple of years before it's completely ready.
It takes a long time.
Oh man, 10 years. Yeah, 10 at least for this one.
Yeah. I mean, I just
So,
finished an
no.
album. I finished my new album earlier this year, and it's called Drinking Songs for Children. And on my last album, I said Drinking Songs for Children coming in 2010. I was like, like, yeah.
It's funny because what entertainers or creative people think is going to happen is like way off of what really happens. And like I do it all the time where I'm like, I'm going to get a show together. We're going to sell tickets and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be a stage show. And like, that's like also 10 years, upcoming. Yeah. And, but that might actually be something that will be soon. I'm in the works with some people right now. I can't say too much, but hopefully August, if all works out. And again, this is something that's been 10 years coming, so I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. But this upcoming August, stay tuned.
All right, man. Anything I can do to help, let me know. That sounds amazing. I still think you should go by the ineffable Eric Burke because nobody can F with you. But that's just that's just my pitch. Wow, that's all cool stuff, man. All right, well, I don't want to kick up too much of your time, man. Here, this is amazing. Your story is really, it's very inspirational. I hope people kind of get something out of this. That if you're going to be in the creative field, I think part of the lessons that we talked about here today is find something you love and just keep doing it. And
Sure.
A lot of those people that give up, what they give it up for is something way less fun and interesting than what they were doing. So even if like you have to give up on this being your full-time thing for now, just don't push it out of your life completely. Like these things that you love, they ebb and flow, and stick with them. That would be my advice. But
I'll tell you what, and just to close off, what you were saying, my entire magic career, I've always had a job as well. Okay, always.
Same here with my art career. Yep.
And it's not. I'm sure I could have not had a job, throughout it. But for one, I meet so many connections at all the jobs I've ever had. I do magic at every job. I'm a banker. I work at a bank and I meet people all the time, that I get corporate parties from and I meet all these cool people. And that's something too that, if you're an entertainer, don't think you're too humble to, do your passion and do your job, that's huge. That's huge. And a lot of people, that's where their downfall is. They decide that, I'm doing good in this field. I'm going to drop my real job or my, part-time job, or whatever you're doing. And I'm just going to do this. And I think that's where they go wrong because now they have an extra stress on top of them, of trying to make, not ends meet. Cause you could be making good money, but there's just a fine line where, you have to stay humble, and that's just, that's
one
me.
thing I learned this actually more for my professional life, but it applies a lot to your art life and creative life in general, is that there are times you do things that went to a lot of work went into it and you're really proud of it and you get like no response from it. And there are times that you essentially achieve walking and chewing gum and people throw you a parade. And like, I think what you have to kind of do is that can be maddening, but I think what you have to kind of do is when you get that walking and chew gum response, you have to mentally go, okay, this is really for the other stuff that no one's ever gonna. And that's, I think, something that can be frustrating to people, but I think it's an important lesson to learn. It's like
it's a huge lesson. That happens with magic all the time. I'll practice something for months, go up and show my wife, and she'll just be like, nah.
Yeah. Or I'm guessing too that like with a little bit I know about tricks, that some of the ones that seem the hardest might be the easiest, and some that are the easiest might be the hardest to some degree too. Because
pretty much,
the little bit I know about it, it's like in some instances I'm surprised by the simplicity, the elegance of it, and then you're just like, well, if it's that elegantly simplistic, the artistry of it is on a whole other level. Because it's I don't know, man. I don't want to give away.
It goes back to being a good actor because you can literally have some stupid trick in front of you, but if you're acting that out so good, it's going to make that so much better. So.
And misdirection too is something that is huge in magic that I've found can if you're good at that, it can apply to many different areas of life. Like it can apply to the way you dress. It can apply to just the way you have conversations. I mean, I'll admit, I got through a lot in my early career by a lot of people wanting to make themselves seem as smart as possible. I kind of consciously tried to get people to think I was dumber than I am so that I could impress them after. It's like I lower the bar and then I overshoot it. Like I would come in kind of even dressed like you are now. So they're a little more like, let the defenses down. And then if you seem smart, you seem brilliant. And that worked for me a lot. I still probably do it to this day to some degree. But
so you think about that, that's the exact same way as I do my magic show. I start low and go high, right?
Yep.
So
yeah,
life.
Yeah. That's where it's really like, it's all about persistence. Like all of it, it's like as much of this stuff is about artistry. You just got to keep doing it, and you got to just form those brain waves and just the neural pathways that get you to be good at this stuff. So, but oh man, well, Eric, you've been impressing me for years. I look forward to many more years of you impressing me and blowing my mind. But and if anybody wants to get in touch with you to book you for something, what is the best way to do so?
I would say the best way to do so is to find me either on Facebook, on Google, because you can just Google magician Eric Burke, EricBurke. I'll come right up. So you could even see pictures of me in the movie and everything like that right there. So just go to Google and type in magician Eric Burke, and I'm there. Right. My number will be there too.
And you've done a couple parties for me, and everybody was blown away. And I've recommended you a couple other people who hired you, and they all had great reviews as well. And I tell you, man, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I always learn a lot. You're a fascinating person, and it's frustrating to have to hold back on some of the questions that I want to ask. But on the other thing, like what you're saying before, is there's so much stuff I've gotten into that once you demystify it, some of the joy goes away a little bit. So it's like with magic, where I know I'm never going to be a magician like you are. I'm sort of happy not knowing, and it's makes it just a fun experience.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you, man. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure, and I will talk to you sometime soon. I really appreciate you being here.
Later.
Later.